Hey everybody and welcome back. About a month ago now, almost, I sat down one afternoon and thought that sheep needed to be publicly shamed on YouTube for their uselessness. I spent the next week or so writing a 2,000-word script, putting together a couple Excel spreadsheets, and recording and editing a video about how terrible they are, and I honestly do stand by that information. They're bad. I'm sorry. In fact, before we even get started, let's take a second to pull in some news stats, because some people in the comments thought that I was being unfair, and that sheep are actually even better than pigs. So I sat down to prove that was wrong. I found that if you had taken shepherd and your sheep produced iridium wool every single day, which, by the way, isn't going to happen, and that you got 2 cloth from those iridium wool 50% of the time, which actually does happen, that you would make just under 95,000 gold per year. That's the equivalent of 64 artisan truffle oils. In that first video, I assumed that we would get sunny days 3/4 of the time, and honestly I usually get more sun than that, but let's just assume that we get sun 3/4 of the truffle producing months, meaning that we should have about 63 sunny days. If our pig finds 1 truffle per day and finds at least 2 truffles a single time in a year, it has outproduced our sheep that did produce iridium wool every single day of the year, which, let me remind you, won't happen. And more importantly, we didn't have to pick shepherd, so the rest of our farm is probably making more money. Yes, it does take more work to find the truffles, and if your argument is that sheep are easier to care for, then yeah, that's fair. You don't have to let them out, you don't have to look around, I totally get it. But at the end of the day, the sheep cannot outpace the pigs. Lost in my blind rage at sheep though, I completely neglected a different animal that needed to be put on blast. Goats are truly, truly terrible barn animals. I'm going to briefly go over the time it takes for a goat to pay itself off, since I do still think that's important for a purchase. But we'll also talk about just how much the goat makes in the long term, just so there's no confusion about whether it can be profitable if we ignore our sunk cost. Just a quick reminder too as we get going, if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you subscribe and leave a like on the video. If somehow this video gets 5,000 likes, I'll do a goat-only Joja run to punish myself. And if you want to help support the channel even more, consider joining my Patreon. There's a link in the video description, and it really helps me drive more of my resources toward content creation. Anyway, let's dive in. For goats, you need a big barn. That's 18,000 gold, 800 wood, and 350 stone. We're already off to a better start than sheep, it seems. Goats are also less expensive than sheep at 4,000 gold instead of 8,000, another win. We are going to need to get a tool for our goat, a milk pail in this case. The difference here is that you might already have one from buying cows. A tool that can do 2 jobs in this economy? It just makes sense. Anyway, our milk pail is 1,000 gold just like the shears. We're going to assume you don't have one just to be fair to our sheep comparison. So we've spent about 24,000 gold on our goat compared to about 51 grand for our sheep. That's hard to argue with. Our costs have essentially been cut in half, so we're able to get things up and running way faster than last time. Hopefully we'll make enough money to pay that goat off more quickly too, huh? Well, first it has to grow up. That's going to take 5 nights, which is actually 1 night longer than the sheep for some reason. And we can build up some friendship in the meantime. Assuming the same weather pattern that we had before, we should have about 105 friendship points by the time our goat is an adult. That's a whole heart just for petting and letting your goat outside when possible. Goats produce every other day, just like sheep. The difference is there's no profession to speed that up. We have to be content with getting 1 goat milk from our little friend every other day for her entire life. We could still take shepherd to increase the friendship with our goat more quickly, and if you're filthy rich, maybe you'd want to do that before switching back to artisan, but since we're not getting products more frequently, we don't really need a higher quality product, we just need the larger one. And there's no chance at a secondary product like a rabbit's foot, so we don't really want to keep shepherd full time. It's been 5 days, and now our little goat is providing milk every other day. Let's look at how long it takes to pay this little baby idiot off. I'm going to assume that you're making cheese from this goat milk because you should be. Like, unless you're playing some kind of game where you can't craft things, or you're gathering ingredients for a recipe, you should always be pressing milk into cheese. In our case, we're also assuming the artisan perk, which means that normal goat cheese is selling for 560 gold. And since we're selling one every other day, we get about 280 gold per day. We will eventually get large goat milk, which we can turn into gold goat cheese. The gold stuff is worth 840 instead, meaning we'll be making about 420 every day. So on day 6, we've earned 560 gold. We need to recover 5,000 gold to pay this goat off. That means about 9 harvests of normal quality milk turned into cheese, or only 6 harvests of large milk. You're almost certainly not going to get that many large milks though, so let's just assume that it takes us, let's say 8 harvests. That's 2 large milks and 6 small. Since goats produce milk every other day, we'll have our goat paid off in about 22 days or so, which is about twice as fast as we paid down our sheep. Pretty neat. If you know a lot about sheep or you just watched the other video, you might recall that artisan cloth sells for 658 gold and you can get one every 3 days for about 219 gold per day. So, goats are looking pretty good here, even from 0 hearts. It looks even better when we're reliably getting large milk, since we'll be looking at 420 gold per day at that point. The sheep do start giving us wool every other day eventually though, and at that point our sheep are making about 329 gold per day, which is probably still lower than our goats. The biggest difference, however, is that wool can produce 2 cloth. Iridium wool does it half the time, gold wool does it 25% of the time, and even silver wool has a 10% chance at producing 2 bolts of cloth. You would need to be getting iridium wool at more than 80% of the output though to outpace our goat cheese production with artisan, and that is a tough sell. However, let's give the sheep owner the shepherd profession. After all, we want to give them a fair chance, right? Well, in that case, they're making bare minimum 564 gold per day, which is stronger than our goats. I covered the best case scenario in the introduction, and that was that we got iridium wool every day, and it turned into 2 bolts of cloth 50% of the time. That made us 94,752 gold per year. A goat providing iridium quality large milk, not that it matters, would make 56 gold goat cheese per year, worth 47,040 gold. Like I said, this is the absolute best case scenario for both animals. Your sheep aren't going to give you iridium wool every day, but even if they give you normal wool every day, and you never ever got a single bolt of extra cloth, your sheep would still produce 65,168 gold per year, which is better than the best case scenario for your goats. So yes, artisan goat cheese is usually, but not always, better than artisan cloth. But if you invest in your sheep, you can make each one, at bare minimum, produce revenue of about 34% more than a goat. Now we're a decent ways into this video, and I'm guessing the argument that you're already preparing in your head is this. Actually, you know what? In fact, if you're one of the folks that pauses to write comments, you might have already dropped this one on me, and maybe you're gonna go back and edit it. I don't know, just guessing. What about aging your goat cheese, you ask? Well, let's take a look. Goat cheese is actually the best artisan good to age, in my opinion, because you can get gold goat cheese from large milk, and that means you're only 1 step away from iridium quality. That means you only need 7 days to improve your goat cheese to the absolute maximum value possible, compared to, say, 56 days for your starfruit wine. Your goat cheese will increase in value by 40 gold per day, assuming you have the artisan perk, meaning you'll go from 840 to 1,120 gold by the time it's ready. Only starfruit and ancient fruit wines increase in value faster than goat cheese, so if you have to pick between wine or cheese, those two are the only ones that actually come out ahead in terms of gold per day. Fun fact. But the astute mathematicians in the crowd might have noticed something. Even if you have casks available for your single goat and your production cycle is up and running, you're still only going to get 1,120 gold every other day, since your goat only gives milk every other day. 1,120 divided by 2 is 560 gold per day, which means a farmer with a shepherd profession and a single sheep is making more money per day than a farmer with the artisan profession aging the cheese from their single goat. Even if you never ever got a second bolt of cloth from your wool, you would still be making 4 more gold per day. Not much at all, but still more. You can argue that no one cares for only one animal at a time and that you'd have more goat cheese aging, but the sheep farmer is just as likely to have a second sheep and a loom to make more cloth, and you can't run out of room for more looms, where you can only have so many casks in your basement. So that brings us full circle. Are goats actually worse than sheep from a purely financial standpoint? Goats will pay themselves off more quickly than sheep, but their maximum revenue is lower than the sheep's minimum revenue when the farmer is optimizing for either animal. The goat only requires the big barn instead of the deluxe though, so that initial investment is quite a bit lower. For gifting, Goat cheese is loved by 2 people, where cloth and wool are both only loved by Emily. It kinda seems like a toss-up. If you optimize for sheep, they are better than goats. If you're planning to use artisan though, to increase the value of your other items, goats are the way to go. Financially speaking, sheep can provide more money than goats, potentially quite a bit more money. But the opportunity cost of losing artisan is probably too high unless you're doing a silly sheep-only farm. Alternatively, you could select shepherd, save up a whole bunch of wool and cloth from your daily production, and then switch back over to artisan to sell it. That's kind of cheesy, but totally a valid strategy. As far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't really want to get more than one of either, or maybe 2 goats on alternating days. But the absolute nail in the coffin comes from the last video. It's that you can really only get goat milk from goats, while you can get wool from rabbits. You might not ever buy a second goat, but you never need to buy a single sheep at all. I guess after all that work, I'm just back where I started. Guess it's time to go back to Pig City for me. What do you think about goats? Am I being too harsh? Am I missing something? I feel like I'm not, but I just don't know. Leave me a comment down below, and I'll catch you in the next video.